Welcome to NovoEDTalks, where we reveal real-world strategies and expert insights from learning and development professionals. In every episode, we chat with practitioners, course designers, learning strategists, and business leads. We hear about their experiences in the learning industry and predictions for the profession and the trends that they're seeing. But before we get started, a little bit about NovoEd. Founded at Stanford's Social Algorithms Lab in 2012, NovoEd is a people-centric, capability-building platform that combines social and collaborative learning to drive performance readiness at scale. Through cohort-based experiences centered around human interaction, NovoEd taps into collective wisdom, placing each learner at the center of perspective, application, and expertise. Large enterprises such as 3M, GE, Marriott International, and Nestle partner with NovoEd to accelerate their critical initiatives, reconnect teams, and achieve rapid alignment through learning that is felt, experienced, and swiftly transformed into impact. Now, let's meet our guest for today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the NovoEDTalks podcast, a space for training trailblazers to get real. My name is Melissa Fisk. I'm the producer of the NovoEDTalks podcast, and today I am joined by Rony Shir, who is the Associate Dean of Executive Education and Lifelong Learning at the University of Miami Herbert Business School. Rony oversees all non-degree programs and leads the school's lifelong learning strategy. In this role, she directs the strategic and operational priorities of MHBS's lifelong learning portfolio, working closely with faculty, administrators, and external partners to design and deliver high-impact, industry-aligned executive education programs. Rony, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here today. Welcome to the NovoEDTalks podcast.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for that warm introduction. Very happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, why don't you start by just kind of introducing yourself a little bit more, talking about your role and the Miami Herbert Business School?
Absolutely. So I'm a proud alumna of the school. I should start with that first and foremost. You can see my amazing degree. I've been with the university for about 11 years now. And really, you kind of summed up what my focus is. It's about providing value through our non-degree customized programs for corporations and for working professionals, all through the different stages of their professional lives.
Wow. And so talk about some of these folks, like what are their biggest challenges and, what are you facing with designing these programs?
Yeah, so honestly, I think the biggest challenge today that probably most people can resonate with is we are really changing at such an accelerated pace. And so, what does that mean for you as an individual, right? And so, I think our goal is to just ensure that everyone, no matter where they are in their career trajectory, feels equipped, has the right skills in order to really kind of embrace this new sort of reality and pace of business life. And I think for us, what that means is making sure that they go in with the right mindset. So that's a big part of a lot of our focus.
I love that. Talk a little bit more about that. How do you approach that challenge of making sure they do have the right mindset, especially at a time where, it is super overwhelming, I think, because
Totally. It really is, honestly. So it's interesting because on one hand, like 90% of our programs have technology as some part of the topic or competency, probably not a surprise, right? But we usually start all of our programs with sessions around growth mindset and really embracing change. So what does that mean? If you are open, if you have this mindset of, okay, I need to kind of stretch myself, I'm learning something new, I'm in a time of uncertainty, having that kind of foundational lens will be a lot, very helpful for you as you navigate your career and really learn new things, right? So that's why I think the mindset piece and embracing change is really integral, even for programs focusing on AI and innovation.
yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Just thinking as these, skill sets needed for success continue to shift, obviously this growth mindset that you're instilling on folks, what strategies though does your team use to ensure that the workforce kind of remains and adaptable and prepared and in this kind of growth mindset capacity?
So honestly, I think one of the biggest things, especially with custom programs, is really leaning on the actual organization that we're working with, right? So we have a lot of the research and the cutting edge knowledge, but we need to work closely to understand from their lens what are the challenges? What are the gaps? What are we trying to achieve? Because once we're in alignment, then myself, our faculty, and really the school can think about, all right, how do we design this to make sure that it resonates, that it's really applicable, right? That everything we're doing actually speaks to the individual. So interactive workshops, digital simulations, group activities, role playing, use cases, anything to really make sure that what we're doing is something that individuals can apply, the next day into their day-to-day function.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, with all those kind of different, avenues to go for implementing some of these strategies, how do you kind of assess and then address skills gaps within any of these programs?
So honestly, it's a great question because I feel like it's changed actually since when I first started till
Right.
now. Of course, serving the participants that go through our programs is important. You can do pre and post, program evaluations and different types of leadership assessments. But we have realized that honestly, what we kind of coined this idea of multidimensional ROI. So value and impact of what we do, that can be sort of viewed differently depending on who we're talking about, right? So, what I mean is the participants might have a different perspective on what are really the success and metrics. What did I gain from this? Versus, maybe the C suite executives, the CFO, the head of HR. And so, our goal is to hear from all of these individuals. So now we do more kind of targeted surveys and feedback to really learn from the different types of stakeholders, if you will. And we even survey and talk to our faculty because they're so important for our programs. And we want to know from them, how did they think the program went? So all of this really helps to hopefully ensure that we're really driving not only just like the KPIs and the sort of quantitative results, but also the actual impact.
Absolutely. We hear that come up a lot and just the importance of data points, yes, but then also having those kind of like on the fly, maybe not on the fly, but anecdotal conversations,
Yeah,
with folks.
absolutely. The alignment. I think
Right,
it's
right.
amazing. Yep.
And like the feeling, what is the feeling that people have from these programs, And I think that's super important. But speaking of KPIs, how, with those surveys, are there any kind of core KPIs that you're looking at or using to kind of determine the success or failures of programs?
Definitely. So, I mean, first of all, KPIs really look differently, program by program. But I think when it comes to kind of new integration of tools or technology, right? Kind of seeing, we do different detailed assessments in the beginning to understand kind of like what is our foundation, right? What are leaders starting with? So let's take AI integration, right, as an example. What's their comfort level? How much do they use it? What's their mindset on it, right? And then we'll do something like that kind of midway through the program, post. And I think what's really important is kind of the future action planning, right? So not only after the program, but checking in, 3, 4 months afterwards to really see, has there been change? Has there been challenges? And making sure that we course correct, right? Hopefully for the next program.
I love that. And I love the idea of doing it, 3 to 4 months after, because I think it's fresh in people's mind, sure, like at the end, and they might feel very confident about doing, what they or applying what they've learned, but then, checking in and it's like, is it still feeling good and that they've retained that knowledge? I think is really, really smart.
Yes, for sure.
Can you share a successful case study or an example of an initiative or program that really significantly impacted employee performance that you could point to?
Yes, I will. And actually, I'm going to also share one where we had, let's call it a little bit of an opportunity to make it better. Because I think it's important to show that, even though this is our space and our field, sometimes we have to also evaluate and course correct. So, we had a company that was in the banking industry. And so it was their private wealth management division. And they had basically a new line of alternative investment funds and products. So our faculty signed NDAs, studied and really learned all about these different types of investment funds. How would you create a robust kind of portfolio? And really did very kind of customized training, role playing with these bankers and advisors. And it led to really kind of exponential growth and a new revenue stream, frankly, for the organization. One other quick example is another firm, which was in the kind of food and wine industry. We actually do projects as a big part of our program, right? But the challenges are company specific. So they had a problem to solve, and then the solution that they had to present, they actually integrated that into the company afterwards. So I think being able to see that kind of impact and seeing that what, individuals did and kind of their accountability in the firm was, very wonderful to view.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I think on the other side with opportunity, we had a program that we designed for a new client. And the way that we designed and facilitated it, we could tell it kind of missed the mark with the participants. Every person kind of retains knowledge differently. And we saw that pretty quickly in the first module. And so we immediately redesigned, in the middle of the program. And then it ended up going very well. But I think the client was very impressed just to see that we also hold ourselves accountable to be adaptable and to instill that growth mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so, so important, just as a general rule of thumb, right? With any program right now, especially with the way things are changing so rapidly. It's, if you're doing a program, for example, on like AI, like by the time you create it and launch it, it's probably changed, So you
Absolutely.
have to be willing to do that. So that's amazing that you guys did that. And thank you for sharing that. I think that's a really great, great example that people can learn from. Talk to me a little bit about technology. What role does technology play in your programs, and how do you leverage different tools and platforms to kind of enhance learning experiences?
Yeah. So again, I mean, it's obviously something that's on everyone's top of mind. And so I think it's something that we have to use as well. So we have sort of like AI powered assistant tools. We have hands on AI simulations. We've even integrated AI agents to be part of our workshops. So when individuals and leaders are going through a workshop, they also kind of can experiment, right, with their comfort level of what does it mean to have an AI agent as kind of part of your team building or discussion, any sort of analytical tools. And so I think the message here is, if we're going to be integrating this and showing you the importance of it, we need to make sure that that's also part of sort of our kind of design, right? And of course, this past year, it's been, like I said, in almost every program we've had.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to stay on top of it,
Yeah,
which is
we
probably
have to.
overwhelming a little
It
bit.
is. It is overwhelming. One thing I will just quickly say is, and I learned this, and I was actually a faculty who mentioned it. The goal is not to be an expert in all these different types of analytical tools. It's to select, one to two that you think you could, leverage and kind of help you in your day to day, and just start trying it out, right? And I think kind of taking it like as an implementation, step by step, is really the best way to go about this because there is a lot out there. And I don't think we need to be experts, but we need to understand it's here and embrace it and find out how can it be useful for us.
Absolutely. And I think what's really cool about it is that everyone's kind of learning at the same time, and it's different for everyone for what they're doing, right? We're like, depending on what I'm doing versus my colleagues, what they're doing, we're all using it very differently. But I think it's on the individual a little bit. And, you and your team as well to like, how is it going to help us in what we're doing? And like, so everyone's kind of learning at the same time, which is really cool. So,
It is cool because it's not like one of those foundational management or leadership competencies that have been around and kind of stood the test of time. Like we're
right.
learning at the speed, or probably even slower than the speed of the change of the technology, right? So that's kind of a unique place to be in. Yeah,
Yeah, but I like what you said about, picking like 1 or 2, and like, okay, it's like, let's make this like bite size, like I can handle this. I don't have to like sit down and be like, what are all these tools? How do I use them? Like I need to use all of them. It's like, no, just, you have a flow integrated into that. So I love that.
totally. Absolutely.
Um, Switching gears a little bit, thinking about just kind of, the L&D space over the past 5 years or so, what would you say some of the biggest takeaways are? Obviously, AI and technology, but yeah, speak to that a little bit.
So, I mean, I think on the skill set side, leadership actually, ironically, more than ever, is just such an important part because if you're going to have such rapid change and so many different new tools and technology that you're learning, it really all starts with the people. So, if you can, I mean, I think culture and strategic alignment within an organization probably even kind of trump the idea of technology and tools, frankly, because if everyone can be on the same page, if they understand what they're contributing, you have a really strong foundation. Critical thinking is huge. So these tools are great and they can be very useful, but the human component is really key. So how do
Yeah.
we leverage these tools? How do we think about them? How do we incorporate them? But also not to assume that because it's technology, it's sort of more important, if you will, right, than individuals. So we have met a lot of people that have AI anxiety, as you call it, right? And the idea is leverage it and embrace it. So the critical thinking, the leadership, and then anything to do with really creating this collective kind of culture within the organization, these are big things that have been coming up. And of course, the growth mindset. So everything I just mentioned has been really just pretty consistently, honestly, requested and something that we've approached with a lot of our companies.
Absolutely. And you talked a lot about technology there, and kind of how that's still, important, but keeping the human skill sets like front and center. But with, technology coming out so rapidly, and the importance of, embracing AI, like you mentioned, how are you kind of or preparing for the next 5 years?
So I think any sort of design of our programs that are hands on, workshop style, where you're really kind of getting in the weeds, so to speak, is going to be the best way to prepare the future of leaders. And I say that because it is not going to be this clear black and white of here's what's happening, here's what you need to do, you're done. Actually, one of the most challenging things to do as an effective leader is to be able to make decisions in times of uncertainty where you might not have all the information or the information is rapidly changing. That is very difficult to do. So we really try to create workshops and simulations that don't give all of the information. But as an individual, you understand I can still make an effective decision, right? Understanding that there's certain data, understanding what kind of data this is, like taking in everything. And so when we look at our programs, we intentionally create workshops where AI really is a benefit, but it's also a disruptor. And so we make people understand it can be both. And so leadership in the digital age, leading with this new kind of reality, is really important. And for anyone that can just be open to that and get their hands dirty and understand growth is not just, kind of the sliding scale up, you're going to go up and down. That'll be the most beneficial skills for the future.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. It's almost like this idea of getting comfortable with rapid change and knowing that you're not going to know everything about it, but you still have to lead, right? Like, I think that's incredible.
Totally. And I am a little bit of a type A, so that has been hard for me too, honestly. I'll be very, transparent to say that. But I have realized that if I can think a bit from that way, it's actually comforting to understand, okay, we're all learning this together and this is part of it, right? And that's how you do get more comfortable by being uncomfortable. So, yeah.
Yeah. Can relate, can relate. It's a lot about, it sounds a lot like parenting as well.
I was just thinking that. I was just thinking the same thing. Absolutely. Yes.
um,
Where you have no control. You just have
yeah,
to go
no,
with it,
you
right? So just
keep
apply
going.
that into business, you'll be fine. Yeah.
Absolutely. Rony, to close on a positive note, what's one of the most important lessons that you've learned on on your journey that you would pass on to someone just starting out on theirs?
I really think going back to being open. So understanding that growth is hard. It's okay to be sort of complacent and be doing something you're familiar with. But if you really want to see some change and growth, you're doing things that are newer to you that might be uncomfortable. And that's okay. That's great. That's part of it. And I think that that was a lesson, at least for myself, both professionally and personally. It took time to understand. And also just realizing that, we are all as humans connected in some shape or form. So try to leverage your network, professionally, personally, and just be open to whatever comes your way. So I think that having that again, the mindset, I say that, but I do think it's very important, that right perspective.
Absolutely. Perspective is everything.
Yes.
Rony, thank you so much for joining us today on the Nova Talks podcast. It was an absolute pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much, Melissa. The pleasure was mine. Take care. Thank you.
And thank you to our listeners for tuning in to another episode of NovoEDTalks.